She couldn't breathe. The coffin was crushing her chest. Her hands were shredded and bleeding from clawing at the wood. 3 months pregnant and trapped 6 feet underground. His cousin did this. The man she trusted. The man who promised to protect her. Now the baby wasn't moving anymore. She tried to scream, but dirt filled her mouth. Her lungs were burning. Vision going black. This was the end. Then she heard it. Someone digging. Fast. Desperate. Hands tearing through the earth above her. Was it him? Was it the dawn coming for her? Or was it already too late? The wood splintered. Light broke through. Strong hands grabbed her. But she couldn't feel the baby kick. Not anymore. Was she being saved just in time to lose everything? She made one terrible mistake. She believed family meant safety. 72 hours ago, Saskia Morvan was choosing baby names in their Chicago penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Now she's suffocating in a pine coffin somewhere in the Illinois woods. Dirt pouring into her mouth while her unborn child stops moving. The man who put her here? Nero Valente, the Don's own cousin. His right hand for 20 years. The man Domenico Valente took 3 bullets for in Detroit back in 2019. She remembers every detail of the moment it turned. November 15th, 2025. 8:47 p.m. Nero's smile when he handed her the wine glass. Domenico asked me to watch over you while he's gone. The bitterness on her tongue. The room tilting. His face hovering over hers as the drug pulled her under. You're carrying his air. That makes you a problem I need to bury. The coffin lid is splintering now. Her hands are destroyed. The baby hasn't kicked in minutes. Air is gone. This is death. Alone in the dark with their child dying inside her. Then strong hands break through. Moonlight floods in. And Domenico Valente, the most feared man in Chicago, pulls her into his arms with hands shredded to bone. I've got you, he whispers. Both of you, but does he? If you're ready to hear the entire story, every twist, every heart-stopping moment, every secret revealed, hit that subscribe button right now. And here's the thing, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I'm bringing you another story that's just as wild, just as unbelievable as this one. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. November 15th, 2025, 8:47 p.m. The penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan glowed with soft amber light. Saskia Morvan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, one hand resting on her barely visible baby bump, the other holding her phone. Domenico's last text had come through 3 hours ago from Detroit. Business running late. Be home tomorrow morning. Love you both. She'd typed back a heart emoji and tried not to worry. At 48 years old, this pregnancy was a miracle she'd stopped believing in. 3 months along, and every kick felt like a promise. A second chance at the family she thought she'd lost when her first marriage fell apart 15 years ago. Domenico had given her that. Given her everything. The most dangerous man in Chicago, reduced to tears when she'd shown him the positive test back in August. The doorbell chimed at 8:30 p.m. exactly. Saskia checked the security screen. Nero Valente stood in the hallway holding roses and a bottle. Sparkling cider, she noticed. Thoughtful. He'd been Domenico's right hand for 20 years. His cousin. The man who'd taken bullets meant for Domenico in Detroit back in 2019. The man Domenico trusted more than anyone. She opened the door. Nero. What are you doing here? His smile was warm. Easy. Domenico asked me to check on you while he's away. Thought we could discuss godfather duties over a drink. He held up the cider. Non-alcoholic, of course. Something flickered in his eyes. Gone before she could name it. That's sweet. But I'm fine. Really? Saskia kept her hand on the door, not quite inviting him in. Please, Saskia. It would mean a lot to me. And to Domenico, Nero's voice carried that gentle insistence she'd heard him use during family dinners. We're family now. Especially with the baby coming. Family. The word loosened something in her chest. She'd been alone most of her life. Parents dead in a car crash when she was 22. No siblings. Her ex-husband a ghost she didn't speak to. This baby was her chance to build something real. And Nero was part of that. She stepped back. Let him in. The penthouse smelled like the lavender candles she'd lit earlier. Nero moved through the space like he'd been there 100 times, which he had. He set the roses in water, poured 2 glasses of cider at the kitchen island. His hands were shaking slightly as he handed her one. "You okay?" Saskia asked. "Long day." He lifted his glass. "To family. And to the little Valente growing in there." They clinked glasses. She sipped. The cider tasted off. Bitter. Chemical. She frowned. Set it down. "This might be bad." "Tastes weird." "Does it?" Nero took a slow drink from his own glass, watching her. "Tastes fine to me." The room tilted. Just slightly. Saskia gripped the edge of the counter. "I don't feel well." "Pregnancy hormones," Nero said softly. "Sit down. I'll get you water." She tried to move toward the couch, but her legs weren't working right. Her fingers fumbled for her phone on the counter. Needed to call Domenico. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Nero's hand closed over hers. Gently removed the phone. "You won't be needing that." "What?" Her tongue felt thick. Heavy. The word came out slurred. His face changed. The warmth drained away like water down a sink. What replaced it was cold. Empty. A stranger's face. "You're going to disappear tonight, Saskia. And when they find you in 3 months, if they find you, it'll look like you ran away. Maybe to California. Maybe to Mexico. Pregnant women do crazy things. Hormones, right?" Terror shot through the fog in her brain. She tried to scream, but her throat wouldn't work. Tried to run, but her body was shutting down. She collapsed. Nero caught her before she hit the floor. "Nothing personal," he whispered, lowering her gently to the carpet. "But you're carrying his air. That makes you a problem I need to bury." The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was Nero pulling plastic sheeting from a bag. The last thing she heard was him making a phone call. "It's done. Bring the van around back." Then nothing. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. The smell of fresh pine. The sound of something heavy hitting wood above her head. Dirt? That was dirt. She tried to move. Her hands hit wood 6 inches from her face. 6 inches above. 6 inches to each side. A coffin. She was in a coffin. The scream that tore from her throat was inhuman. Animal. It went on until her voice cracked and blood filled her mouth. She clawed at the wood above her head. Her fingernails caught. Tore. The pain was distant. Unimportant. She had to get out. Had to get to her baby. The baby. Saskia went still. Pressed both hands to her stomach. Waited. 5 seconds. 10. Then, a kick. Weak, but there. The sob that escaped her was half relief, half despair. "Okay," she whispered into the darkness. "Okay, baby. We're okay. Your daddy's coming. He's coming for us." But the sound of dirt hitting the coffin lid above her said otherwise. Someone was burying her alive, and they were already 6 feet deep. The darkness was absolute. Saskia had never known darkness like this. Thick, suffocating, alive. She could feel it pressing against her eyes. Could taste it in the back of her throat. This was the darkness of a grave, of death. She forced herself to breathe slowly. In through her nose. Out through her mouth. Panic would kill her faster than the coffin would. Panic would steal the oxygen she needed to stay alive, to keep the baby alive. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, a tiny fist or foot pressing against the inside of her womb. Saskia's hand found the spot. Pressed back. "I'm here," she whispered. "Mama's here." Her voice sounded strange in the enclosed space. Muffled, wrong. How much air did she have? Hours? Minutes? She couldn't remember. Her phone. She needed her phone. Her fingers scrambled through her pockets. Found it in her back pocket. The screen lit up, blindingly bright in the darkness. 2% battery. No signal. Of course no signal. She was underground. But the light. God, the light. She held it up, saw rough pine boards inches from her face, saw blood on the wood where she'd clawed, saw the coffin was crude, hastily built. And there, in each corner, small holes drilled through the lid. Air holes. Nero had drilled air holes. He didn't want her to die quickly. He wanted her to suffer, to know she was dying, to feel every second of it. The cruelty of it broke something in her chest. This was the man who'd laughed at Domenico's jokes, who'd held her chair at family dinners, who'd congratulated them when they'd announced the pregnancy. He'd been planning this. Even then, Saskia's hands shook as she opened her phone camera. Started recording. The battery was at 1% now. Seconds left. She had seconds to say goodbye to the man she loved. Domenico. Her voice cracked. Your cousin did this, Nero. He drugged me and buried me alive. I'm somewhere, I don't know where. Woods. I heard crows earlier. I'm so sorry I trusted him. I'm so sorry. The tears came now, hot and fast. I love you so much. If you find me, please save our baby. Please. I don't care about me. Just save. The phone died, went black in her hand. The darkness rushed back in. Saskia screamed again, screamed until her throat was raw, until she tasted copper, until the baby started kicking frantically, distressed by her distress. She forced herself to stop, forced herself to breathe. Think. She had to think. The air holes meant oxygen, meant time. How much time? She started counting the baby's kicks. 1 kick. 30 seconds. Another kick. 30 seconds. A rhythm. A heartbeat inside a heartbeat. As long as the baby kept kicking, they were both alive. She ran her hands along the coffin walls. Felt for weak spots. Found none. The wood was thin but solid. She tried to push upward with her hands, with her feet. Nothing moved. 6 feet of earth weighed her down. 6 feet of Illinois soil pressing down on cheap pine. She thought of Domenico, tried to imagine what he'd do when he found out she was gone. Would he believe Nero's lies? Would he think she'd left him? No. Domenico knew her, knew she'd never leave. Never leave him or their baby or the life they were building. He'd come looking. But would he find her in time? Time. How much time had passed? It felt like hours, but might have been minutes. Her sense of reality was slipping. The darkness was eating at her. She could feel it crawling into her head, whispering that this was the end, that she'd die here, that her baby would die with her. No, she said out loud. No, we're not dying here. She started kicking. Hard. Slamming her feet against the end of the coffin. The impact sent shocks of pain up her legs. She didn't care. Kicked harder. Harder. Something cracked. Wood or bone, she couldn't tell. Didn't matter. The baby stopped kicking. Saskia went still, hand on her stomach, waiting. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Nothing. No. Baby, please. Please kick for mama, please. 20 seconds. 30. Fear like she'd never known flooded her system. This was worse than the coffin, worse than the darkness, worse than death. This was losing her child. Please, she sobbed. Please, God, please. 45 seconds. Then a kick. Small, weak, but there. Saskia collapsed back against the coffin floor. Relief made her light-headed. Okay, baby, no more kick in the box. Mama promises. Just keep moving for me. Keep letting me know you're okay. She lay there in the dark, counting kicks, counting breaths, counting the seconds until Domenico found her. Because he would find her. He had to. Above ground, 500 miles away, Domenico Valente's plane touched down at O'Hare International Airport. 11:43 p.m., November 15th, 2025. His phone showed 8 text messages from Nero, all saying the same thing. Saskia's fine. Sleeping. Don't worry, cousin. I've got everything under control. Domenico stared at the messages, At the timestamp, all sent within the same 10-minute window, 9:15 to 9:25 p.m. His instincts, sharpened by 30 years in the life, started screaming. Something was very, very wrong. Domenico Valente didn't believe in coincidences. 30 years running Chicago's underworld had taught him that patterns meant something. And 8 identical texts from Nero in 10 minutes? That was a pattern. He dialed Saskia's number from the back of his town car. It rang once, twice, 5 times. Voicemail. Her voice, warm, laughing, recorded 3 months ago, asked him to leave a message. He didn't. Hung up. Tried again. Same result. Drive faster, he told his driver, Vito Cross. The only man he trusted as much as... He stopped the thought. As much as Nero. The penthouse was 17 minutes from O'Hare at this time of night. Vito made it in 11. Domenico was out of the car before it fully stopped, his key already in his hand. The lobby security guard started to greet him, but something in Domenico's face made him step back, made him go silent. The elevator ride to the 40th floor took 38 seconds. Domenico counted every one. His right hand rested on the gun at his hip. His left clenched and unclenched. 48 hours ago, he'd kissed Saskia goodbye, had pressed his hand to his stomach and felt their daughter kick, had promised he'd be back by morning. He'd lied. The penthouse door was locked. Normal. He opened it. Stepped inside. The lavender candles she loved were burned down to nothing. 2 wine glasses sat on the kitchen island, one still half full, one empty. Roses in a vase. Fresh. Expensive. Saskia? His voice echoed in the empty space. Nothing. He moved through the penthouse systematically. Bedroom, bed made, her side not slept in. Bathroom, toothbrush dry, makeup untouched. Closet, her suitcase still there, clothes hanging neat. Her purse on the dresser, wallet inside, ID inside. Phone charger plugged in by the bed, cord hanging loose. She wouldn't leave without her purse. Wouldn't leave without her phone. Wouldn't leave at all. Domenico returned to the kitchen, examined the wine glasses, lifted the half-full one to his nose. Sparkling cider, with something else underneath. Something chemical. His blood went cold. He pulled out his phone, dialed Nero. It rang 4 times before his cousin answered, voice thick with sleep. Or fake sleep. Domenico? It's almost midnight. Where's Saskia? Silence. 2 seconds too long. What do you mean? She's home, isn't she? I left around 10. She was tired. Pregnancy stuff, you know. You were here. Not a question. Yeah, you asked me to check on her, remember? Brought her some flowers. Had a drink. She said she was exhausted, so I left. Nero's voice was smooth. Easy. Practiced. Why? Is something wrong? Everything about this was wrong. She's not here. What? Fake surprise. Perfectly timed. Maybe she went for a walk. You know how she gets restless at night? At midnight. 3 months pregnant. Without her purse or phone. Another pause. Shorter this time. I don't know what to tell you, cousin. Maybe check with her friends? Pregnancy hormones can make women do strange things. My ex-wife used to... If you're lying to me, Domenico said quietly, I will know, and you will pray for death long before I give it to you. He hung up, stood in his kitchen, their kitchen, and let the rage come. Let it fill him up and sharpen his mind. Someone had taken Saskia. Someone had drugged her and taken her from their home. And every instinct he had was screaming one name. Family. His own blood. Vito appeared in the doorway. Boss? Get our tech guy. I want Nero's phone records, his credit cards. Security footage from this building. Every second from 6 p.m. until now. Domenico's voice was ice. And get Marco and Tommy. We're paying Nero a visit. You think he... I know he did. Domenico picked up the wine glass. Get this tested. I want to know what he gave her. I want to know everything. 23 minutes later, they pulled up to the Valente family compound in Oak Park. The house where Domenico's grandfather had raised 5 children. Where Domenico and Nero had played as boys. where they'd sworn blood oaths at 16 to protect the family above all else. That oath meant nothing now. Nero's car was in the driveway. Lights on in the second-floor study. Domenico didn't knock. Used his key. Walked through the house he'd grown up in like he owned it. Because he did. Had owned it since his father's stroke 3 years ago. Had let Nero live here out of loyalty. Out of love. Nero looked up from his desk as Domenico entered. Smiled. Domenico. Twice in one night? Must be serious. Where is she? Domenico crossed the room slowly, deliberately, giving Nero a chance to confess. To make this right. I told you, I don't. Domenico's hand shot out, grabbed Nero by the throat, slammed him back against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. Do not lie to me again. Nero's eyes went wide, hands scrabbling at Domenico's wrist. I don't know where she is. I swear. You were the last person to see her. You brought her flowers, gave her a drink. Domenico's grip tightened. What did you give her, Nero? Nothing, just cider. She was fine when I left. Then why did you text me 8 times saying she was sleeping? If you left at 10, how did you know she was sleeping at 9:15? The color drained from Nero's face. Where is she? Domenico's voice dropped to a whisper. The whisper that made grown men confess, that made enemies beg. Where is my woman? Where is my child? Nero's face changed. The fear flickered out. What replaced it was something darker, colder. You'll never find her, cousin. She's where she belongs. The words hung between them. Then Domenico moved. His fist connected with Nero's nose. Felt bone crunch. Blood exploded across Nero's face. He hit him again. Again. Would have killed him right there. But Vito and Marco pulled him back. Boss, we need him alive. Vito was shouting. We need him to tell us where she is. Domenico stood there, chest heaving, knuckles split open. Nero was on the floor, blood pouring from his nose and mouth. Laughing. Actually, laughing. 48 hours, Nero gasped. That's what you've got. Maybe less. Better start digging, cousin. Digging. The word hit Domenico like a bullet. Vito's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Went pale. Boss. Tech guy found Nero's burner phone. Last location pinged near O'Hare cargo terminals. 11:43 p.m. The same time Nero sent those texts. And there's footage. From the building. You need to see this. They watched it on Vito's phone. Nero leaving the penthouse at 9:47 p.m. Returning at 10:15 p.m. with 2 men Domenico didn't recognize. Leaving again at 11:38 p.m., rolling a large wooden crate on a dolly, loading it into a white van, a coffin-sized crate. Domenico's world tilted, narrowed to a single point of absolute clarity. Nero had buried her. Buried Saskia alive. Somewhere she'd suffocate slowly, terrified, alone, with their daughter dying inside her. Find that van, Domenico said. Find it now. I want satellite footage. Traffic cameras. Every second of its route tracked. Move. His men scattered. Domenico stood over Nero, who was still laughing through the blood. 48 hours, Nero repeated. Clocks ticking. Domenico crouched down, put his gun against Nero's temple. Tell me where she is and I'll make your death quick. No deal. Nero's smile was red with blood. I want to know you failed. Want to know you found her too late. Want to watch you live with that for the rest of your miserable life. Domenico pulled the trigger. Click. Empty chamber. Because Vito had unloaded it when he'd pulled Domenico off Nero. Smart. They needed information, needed breadcrumbs to follow. But every instinct Domenico had was screaming that 48 hours was already too long. That Saskia was running out of time. That his daughter was dying 6 feet under while he stood here doing nothing. 4 a.m. November 16th, 2025. Domenico hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't stopped moving since he'd left Nero bleeding on the compound floor. His tech team had taken over the penthouse. 6 men with laptops and satellite feeds tracking the white van through Chicago's surveillance network. They'd found it at a Hertz rental lot in Peru, Illinois. Returned at 3:17 a.m. by someone wearing a baseball cap and gloves. The driver had known where the cameras were, had kept his face turned away. But the van told its own story. Soil samples from the tire treads. Rich, dark earth. High clay content. Forest floor. The lab tech, a man Domenico had on permanent retainer, ran it through his database. Matched it to a 50-acre radius in Starved Rock State Park, 90 miles southwest of Chicago. That's where she is, Domenico said, staring at the map on the laptop screen. 50 acres of dense forest. Hundreds of potential burial sites. Boss. Vito's voice was careful, gentle. The voice he used when he had to deliver bad news. That's a lot of ground to cover. And if she's been under since last night... He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. They both knew the math. Buried alive with limited oxygen. 9 hours gone already. Maybe 12 hours max before the air ran out. Before she suffocated in the dark. Before their daughter died with her. Get the crew, Domenico said. Everyone. I want thermal imaging equipment. Ground-penetrating radar. Cadaver dogs. He stopped. The word caught in his throat. Cadaver. Search and rescue dogs. Whatever we need. We leave in 10 minutes. They made it to Starved Rock by 6:04 a.m. Dawn was breaking over the Illinois River Valley, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful. Saskia would have loved it. She'd wanted to bring their daughter here someday. Show her the canyons and waterfalls. Make memories. Now she was buried somewhere in these woods, dying. While Domenico stood on a dirt road with a map and a prayer. Split into teams, he told his men. 8 of them total, plus Vito. Grid pattern. Mark anything that looks disturbed. Fresh digging, scattered leaves, anything. They fanned out. Domenico took the western ridge himself, alone. Something pulled him there. Instinct. Or desperation. Or the kind of bond that forms between two people who've seen each other's souls. Saskia was here, somewhere close. He could feel her. The forest was dense. Oak and hickory trees towered overhead. His boots crunched through fallen leaves. Early morning mist clung to the ground. He moved slowly, methodically, checking every disturbed patch of earth, every suspicious mound, found old campsites, a rotted deer carcass, a patch of dirt that looked fresh but was just a fallen tree's root system. Nothing. His phone buzzed. Vito. Boss, we've got something. Northeast quadrant. Freshly moved earth. Domenico ran. Crashed through underbrush. Arrived at the site, breathing hard. Marco and Tommy were already digging. Shovels, biting into dirt. 10 minutes later, they hit wood. Pried open the lid. Empty. A practice grave. Or a decoy. Or just an old coffin someone had dumped decades ago. Keep looking, Domenico said. They found 3 more false sites. Each one sent hope soaring, then crushed it. Each one stole minutes they didn't have. By 7:15 a.m., Domenico was starting to lose control. The cold, calculated violence that had kept him alive and in power for 30 years was cracking. Underneath was something raw, primal, terror. He was going to lose her. Going to find her too late. Going to spend the rest of his life knowing he'd failed the only person who'd ever made him feel human. Then his boot hit something that didn't feel right. Soft earth, where there should have been packed forest floor. He dropped to his knees. Started digging with his bare hands. Clawing through dirt and leaves and roots. His men saw him and came running. Brought shovels. No. Domenico shoved them away. No shovels. We could hit her. I need to feel... His fingers hit wood at 7:21 a.m. Time stopped, then exploded into motion. He tore at the earth like an animal. Threw handfuls of dirt behind him. Exposed a crude pine coffin 6 feet down. 4 air holes drilled in the corners. He got his fingers under the lid edge. Pulled. Wood splintered. Nails shrieked. The lid came off in pieces. And there she was. Saskia. His Saskia. Blue-lipped and still. Covered in blood and dirt. Eyes closed. Not breathing. No, The word came out broken. No, no, no. He pulled her out of the grave. She was limp in his arms. Dead weight. He laid her on the forest floor, tilted her head back, cleared dirt from her mouth, started CPR, 30 compressions, hard enough to crack ribs. 2 breaths. Again. Again. Come on, baby. Come on. Breathe for me. Breathe. Nothing. 30 more compressions. 2 more breaths. His hands were shaking. His vision was blurring. He'd killed hundreds of men in his life, had watched them die without flinching. But this, losing her, he couldn't survive this. Please, he whispered. Please don't leave me. Her body convulsed. She jackknifed forward, vomited soil and blood and bile onto the leaves, gasped. A horrible, rattling breath. Then another. Her eyes flew open, wild, unfocused, terrified. You're safe, Domenico said, pulling her against his chest. I've got you. You're safe? She was shaking violently, trying to speak. Her voice came out as a croak. The baby. Domenico's world narrowed to that one word, baby. He pressed his ear to her stomach, listened. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing but his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Then, a kick. Faint, but unmistakable. A tiny fist or foot pushing against the inside of her womb. She's alive, he breathed. The baby's alive. Saskia collapsed against him, sobbing, bleeding, alive. He held her in the dirt 6 feet down in a grave meant to be her tomb. Held her while she shook, while she cried, while their daughter kicked inside her to prove she'd survived. I'm sorry, he whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry. I should have known. Should have protected you. He smiled, Saskia rasped. When he drugged me, he smiled. Rage like Domenico had never known flooded his system. Pure, cold, lethal. Nero would pay for this, would beg for death long before it came. But first, headlights flashed through the trees. 2 vehicles approaching fast on the access road. Vito's gun was already out. Boss, we've got company, Nero's cleanup crew, coming to make sure Saskia stayed buried. Coming to finish what he'd started. The headlights cut through the morning mist like knives. 2 black SUVs rolling slow on the access road. Hunting. Domenico wrapped himself around Saskia, shielding her body with his. She was still shaking, still coughing up dirt, still alive by minutes. How many? He asked Vito. Vito had his binoculars up. 4 in the first vehicle, 3 in the second, all armed. He lowered the binoculars, met Domenico's eyes. We're outnumbered. I don't care. Domenico's voice was cold steel. They don't touch her. His men formed a perimeter. Marco and Tommy took position behind trees with rifles. Vito stayed close to Domenico, his Glock out and ready. The other 5 spread through the forest, creating a kill zone. The SUVs stopped 50 yards from the gravesite. Doors opened. Men stepped out. Professional muscle, not family. Nero had hired outside talent for this. Smart. Kept his own hands clean. Or tried to. The lead man was tall. Scarred. Carrying a shotgun like he knew how to use it. We're looking for a burial site. Old family matter. You boys should move along. This is Valente land, Vito called back. You're trespassing. Funny. The scarred man smiled. Nero Valente sent us. Said we had permission. Domenico stood slowly, kept Saskia behind him. His suit was destroyed, covered in dirt and blood and splinters. His hands were shredded from tearing through the coffin. But his eyes were steady, clear, the eyes of a man who'd killed his first rival at 19 and hadn't stopped since. Nero doesn't give permission on my land, Domenico said quietly. I do. Recognition flickered across the scarred man's face. Everyone in Chicago knew Domenico Valente, knew his reputation, knew he'd once hung a man from a bridge by his intestines for touching his sister. Mr. Valente, The scarred man's tone shifted. Respectful. Careful. We were told this was a sanctioned cleanup. If there's been a misunderstanding... The only misunderstanding, Domenico said, is that you're still breathing. The scarred man's hand twitched toward his shotgun. Vito shot him in the chest before he cleared leather. The man went down hard. The forest exploded into gunfire. Domenico dropped over Saskia, covered her completely as bullets tore through trees above their heads. She screamed, a raw, broken sound. He pressed his hand over her mouth, whispered in her ear, "Stay down. Don't move. I've got you." Marco's rifle barked 3 times. 2 men dropped. Tommy took out another with a headshot from 40 yards. Beautiful shooting. Clean. But there were still 4 left and they had automatic weapons. A spray of bullets chewed through the oak tree 6 inches from Domenico's head. Wood chips exploded. One caught him across the cheek. Blood ran hot down his jaw. He didn't feel it. Felt nothing but Saskia's heart hammering against his chest. Felt their daughter kicking frantically inside her. "Vito," Domenico shouted. "Get her to the car. Not leaving you, boss." "That's an order." Domenico pulled his own gun. A .45 he'd carried for 15 years. His father's gun. He'd never missed with it. Didn't plan to start now. Vito grabbed Saskia under the arms, started dragging her backward through the leaves. She fought him, clawing to get back to Domenico. "No, no, don't leave him. Go!" Domenico rose to his knees, fired 3 times, hit 2 men, sent a mass. They went down. That left 2. The remaining shooters realized they were losing, started retreating to the SUVs. Domenico stood, walked toward them through the gunfire, utterly calm, utterly focused, each step deliberate. He fired again, caught 1 man in the throat. The man fell choking. The last one made it to the SUV, got behind the wheel. Engine roared to life. Tires spun on forest floor. Domenico raised his gun, sighted down the barrel. Breathed out. Fired once. The bullet went through the back window, through the driver's seat, through the driver. The SUV lurched sideways, crashed into a tree, went still. Silence fell over the forest. Domenico stood there breathing hard, blood on his face, dirt under his nails. His men emerged from cover, all alive, all intact. Marco was limping but walking. Tommy had a graze across his shoulder, nothing serious. "Police will be here soon," Vito said. "Shots fired this close to the park? Someone called it in." "Then we move." Domenico holstered his gun, turned back to where Vito had dragged Saskia, found her sitting against a tree, hands pressed to her stomach, rocking slightly, eyes distant. Shock. She was going into shock. He knelt in front of her, touched her face gently. "Saskia, look at me, baby. Look at me." Her eyes focused slowly, found his. The baby stopped moving. Ice flooded Domenico's veins. When? During the shooting. She was kicking, and then she just stopped. Tears streaked through the dirt on her face. "Domenico, I can't feel her. I can't feel anything." He pressed his hand to her stomach. Waited. 5 seconds. Nothing. His world tilted. No. They hadn't come this far. Hadn't survived burial and betrayal and bullets just to lose their daughter now. "We need a hospital," he said. Now, Vito was already on his phone. "Nearest trauma center is in Ottawa. 20 minutes. Make it 10. Domenico lifted Saskia into his arms. She weighed nothing. Felt fragile as glass. He'd never seen her like this. Broken, terrified, helpless. She was the strongest person he'd ever known. Had survived being buried alive. Had fought through 9 hours of suffocation to stay conscious. To stay alive for their baby. Now that baby might be dying anyway. He carried her to his Escalade, laid her across the back seat with her head in his lap. Vito drove like a man possessed. 90 miles an hour on country roads. Domenico kept his hand on Saskia's stomach the whole time, kept waiting for a kick that never came. "Talk to me," he said softly. "Stay awake. Tell me about the baby names you picked." "Kova," Saskia whispered. "If it's a girl." "Kova Valente?" Her voice broke. "It means cave in Italian. Because she survived the grave with me. Because she's a fighter like her daddy." "She's still fighting," Domenico said. But he wasn't sure. Wasn't sure of anything except that if he lost them both, he'd burn Chicago to the ground. Would salt the earth where Nero's body fell. Would end the family. End everything. Vito took a corner at 70. The SUV fish-tailed. Corrected. Saskia gasped. Her whole body went rigid. "What?" Domenico leaned over her. "What is it?" She kicked. Saskia's eyes went wide, filled with tears. She kicked. Oh God, there it is again. Domenico pressed his hand where hers was. Felt it. A strong, angry kick, like their daughter was pissed about all the jostling, about being woken from sleep, about everything her mother had been through. "That's my girl," he breathed. "That's my fighter." They hit the hospital at 7:52 a.m. Domenico carried Saskia through the ER doors. Started shouting before anyone could ask questions. "I need a doctor. Now, she's pregnant. 3 months. She was buried alive. The baby needs..." A trauma team materialized. Took Saskia from his arms. Loaded her onto a gurney. Someone was asking him questions. What happened? How long was she buried? Was she injured? He answered on autopilot. Dirt? Blood? Vomit. 9 hours underground. Oxygen deprivation. Stress. The baby stopped kicking. They wheeled her away through double doors. A nurse tried to stop Domenico from following. He looked at her, said nothing. She stepped aside. He stood outside the exam room while they worked. Watched through the window as they hooked Saskia to monitors. 4 lines. Oxygen. A doctor pressed an ultrasound wand to her stomach. Everyone went still, staring at the screen. Domenico couldn't see it from the hallway. Couldn't see if their daughter's heart was beating. Couldn't see anything except Saskia's face, pale, terrified, waiting. Then the doctor smiled, turned the monitor so Saskia could see, said something Domenico couldn't hear through the glass. Saskia's face crumpled. She started sobbing. But the sobs were relief, joy, life. The doctor came out a minute later. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes. "Mr. Valente? The baby?" His voice didn't sound like his own. Strong heartbeat. Moving well. No signs of fetal distress. She smiled. "Your daughter is a miracle. By all medical logic, she shouldn't have survived what her mother went through. But she did." Domenico's legs gave out. He caught himself against the wall. Vito grabbed his arm. Held him steady. "Your wife needs rest, 4 fluids, observation, and probably counseling." What she experienced was severe trauma, but physically, both mother and baby are stable. The doctor paused. "How did this happen?" "Family matter," Domenico said quietly. The doctor's expression said she didn't believe him, but she nodded. "I'll need to report this. The police will want to talk to her. They can get in line." He went into the exam room. Saskia was still crying, still clutching her stomach. He sat on the edge of the bed, took her hand. She grabbed him like a lifeline. "He tried to kill us," she whispered. "He tried to kill our baby." "I know. What are you going to do?" Domenico looked at her, at this woman who'd survived the impossible, who'd fought through suffocation and darkness and terror to protect their child, who'd earned the right to ask for blood. "What do you want me to do?" Her eyes hardened. "I want him to feel what I felt. Every second of it. Then that's what he'll get." But first, they had to survive what came next. Because Nero knew they'd found her. Knew his plan had failed. Knew Domenico would come for him now with everything he had. And desperate men did desperate things. The hospital wanted to keep Saskia for 72 hours. Domenico gave them 4. By noon on November 16th, He had her in a car heading to Gary, Indiana. Not home. Home wasn't safe anymore. Nero knew where they lived, knew their routines, knew every entrance and exit. The safe house was a warehouse his grandfather had bought in 1968. 20,000 square feet of empty space with reinforced doors and no windows on the ground floor. Ugly, cold, but defensible. Domenico had used it twice before. Once when the Bratva put a contract on him in 20. Once when the feds were closing in on his drug operation in 2022. Both times he'd walked out alive. He carried Saskia inside. She'd been silent since they left the hospital. Hadn't spoken. Hadn't cried. Just stared at nothing while her hand stayed pressed to her stomach. Checking. Always checking that the baby was still moving. "I know it's not much," Domenico said, laying her on the bed he'd had brought in. Medical-grade mattress. Clean sheets, soft pillows, but it's safe. Nero doesn't know about this place. Saskia finally looked at him. "Does anyone else know?" "Your men?" "Vito, that's it." "Good." She closed her eyes. "I don't trust anyone. Not anymore." He couldn't blame her. She'd trusted Nero, had let him into their home, had drunk what he'd given her, and he'd buried her alive for it. That kind of betrayal didn't heal. It scarred. "Dr. Ashwin is coming," Domenico said. "She'll examine you. Make sure everything's okay. The hospital said we were fine. I want a second opinion. Leona's been my doctor for 20 years. I trust her." What he didn't say, "I need someone I trust because I don't trust the hospital not to report this. Don't trust that Nero doesn't have someone on staff watching for us. Don't trust anything anymore." Dr. Leona Ashwin arrived at 2 p.m. in an unmarked car. She was 52, gray-haired, and utterly unflappable. She'd stitched Domenico up after shootings, stabbings, and one memorable incident with a chainsaw. Had never asked questions. Had never judged. She examined Saskia for an hour. Ultrasound, blood work, physical exam. When she came out of the bedroom, her face was carefully neutral. The baby's heartbeat is strong, growth is normal, no signs of placental abruption. Leona paused. "But there's significant risk here, Domenico. The trauma, the oxygen deprivation, the stress, any of those could cause complications down the line. Preterm labor, placental separation, fetal distress. But she's okay now?" "Now, yes. Tomorrow? Next week? I can't promise anything." Leona met his eyes. She needs complete bed rest, no stress, no excitement, and she needs psychological care. What happened to her, being buried alive, that's going to haunt her. PTSD, anxiety, possibly severe depression. "I'll take care of her. I know you will." Leona touched his arm. "But you need to take care of yourself, too. You look like hell." He did. Hadn't slept in 36 hours. Hadn't eaten. His hands were bandaged from tearing through the coffin. His face was stitched where the wood chip had caught him. His entire body ached from digging and fighting and carrying Saskia. But he couldn't rest. Not while Nero was out there. Not while the threat remained. "I'll sleep when this is over," he said. Leona left at 4 p.m. with instructions and medications. Domenico sat in a chair beside Saskia's bed with his gun in his lap. Watching her sleep. Watching her chest rise and fall. Proof she was alive. Proof they'd made it. But for how long? His phone rang at 6:30 p.m. Unknown number. He answered. "Yeah." "Domenico," Nero's voice. Calm, almost friendly. "I heard about the excitement at Starved Rock. Glad you found her in time." Domenico's hand tightened on the phone. "Where are you?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll never find me." Nero laughed. "Let's talk, cousin. This doesn't have to end in blood. We're family. You buried my woman alive. You tried to kill my daughter. There's only one way this ends. I was protecting the family. Protecting our legacy." Nero's voice rose, lost its calm. "That baby would have destroyed everything. Made you weak. Made you choose her over us." "I already chose her." "Exactly." Bitterness dripped through the line. You chose some 48-year-old art teacher over 30 years of loyalty, over blood, over me. You made that choice when you drugged her. She was a problem that needed solving. Nero's voice went cold again. And she still is. You really think you can protect her 24/7? Think you can watch her every second? I'll wait, Domenico. Wait until you slip, until you look away. And then I'll finish what I started. The line went dead. Domenico sat there staring at his phone, at the threat, at the promise. Nero wasn't going to stop, wasn't going to run. He was going to keep coming until Saskia was dead or he was. I heard Saskia's voice from the bed. Quiet, flat. He's going to try again. He's not getting near you. You can't protect me forever. She sat up slowly. Her face was pale. Her eyes were haunted. He's right about that. Eventually you'll have to sleep, have to eat, have to look away, and he'll be waiting. Then we end it first. How? Saskia wrapped her arms around herself, around their daughter. He's in hiding. You don't know where he is. And even if you find him, he'll see you coming. He knows how you think, knows how you operate. He's your blood. She was right. Nero knew every play in Domenico's book, knew every safe house, every ally, every tactic. Hunting him would be like hunting himself, unless Domenico changed the game, stopped hunting and started baiting, made Nero come to him. I have an idea, he said slowly, but you're not going to like it. Tell me anyway. We let Nero think he won. Think you're too traumatized to fight back. Think I'm too focused on protecting you to come after him. Domenico leaned forward. We make him comfortable, confident. And when he makes his move, you'll be waiting, Saskia finished. We'll be waiting. Her eyes widened. You want to use me as bait. I want to give you the chance to end this. To look him in the eye when he pays for what he did. Domenico reached for her hand. But only if you want to. Only if you're strong enough. Saskia was quiet for a long time. Her hand moved to her stomach, to their daughter who'd survived the impossible, who was alive because her mother had refused to give up, refused to die. I'm strong enough, she said finally. But I have one condition. Anything. When we get him, when we end this, I want to be the one who buries him. Domenico looked at this woman, this 48-year-old former art conservator who'd never fired a gun, who'd lived a peaceful life until she'd fallen in love with a monster, who'd been transformed by trauma into something harder, colder, more dangerous. She wasn't just his anymore. Wasn't just the mother of his child. She was a Valente now. And Valentes didn't forgive. They buried their enemies and slept well after. Deal? Domenico said. The trap was set. Now, they just had to wait for Nero to walk into it. But on November 18th, at 3:47 a.m., Saskia woke up screaming. Domenico bolted from his chair, gun drawn. No threat. No intruders. Just Saskia thrashing in bed, eyes wild, gasping for air. I can't breathe. The dirt, it's in my mouth. I can't. You're safe? He grabbed her shoulders. Look at me. You're safe. You're above ground. You're breathing. She looked at him but didn't see him. Saw the coffin. Saw the darkness. Saw death. Then she looked down. Blood stained the sheets between her legs. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Domenico's world stopped. Blood. Too much blood. Saskia doubled over, cried out, clutched her stomach. Is it happening? She gasped. Am I losing her? He grabbed his phone. Called Leona. She answered on the first ring. What's wrong? Blood. Contractions. We need... I'm on my way. Don't move her. Domenico dropped beside the bed, pressed his hand to Saskia's stomach, felt for movement, felt for life. Come on, baby girl. Come on. Fight for us. One more time. A kick. Weak but there. She's still fighting, he told Saskia. Our daughter's still fighting. But the question was, for how much longer? Dr. Leona Ashwin arrived in 23 minutes. Domenico counted every second. Watched Saskia curl around herself on blood-soaked sheets. Watched her cry silently. The kind of crying that came from a place beyond sound. Beyond hope. Leona swept into the bedroom with her medical bag. Calm. Professional. She pulled on gloves and examined Saskia while Domenico stood by the window. Unable to watch. Unable to look away. How much blood? Leona asked. I don't know. Too much. Domenico's voice was raw. Is she miscarrying? Let me check. Leona's hands moved with practiced efficiency. Ultrasound wand. Gel. The machine hummed to life. Static filled the room. Then, a rapid heartbeat. Fast and strong. Defiant. The baby's fine, Leona said. Heartbeat is elevated but strong. No signs of fetal distress. Saskia's sob was part relief, part confusion. Then, why is there blood? Stress-induced spotting. Your body's been through extreme trauma. The blood vessels in your uterus are fragile right now. Add in the anxiety, the lack of sleep, the constant fear. Leona paused. This isn't miscarriage. It's your body trying to cope with the impossible... The contractions? Domenico asked. False labor. Also called Braxton Hicks. They can be triggered by dehydration, stress, or trauma. They feel real, but they're not causing cervical change. The baby isn't coming... Leona looked between them. But you need to understand something. Saskia's body can't sustain this level of stress. If it continues, false labor will become real labor. And at 14 weeks, that baby won't survive. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. What do I do? Saskia whispered. How do I stop being terrified? How do I forget that I was buried alive? That he's still out there wanting us dead? You don't forget. Leona sat on the edge of the bed. Took Saskia's hand. But you have to find a way to live with it. Therapy, medication, whatever it takes. Because right now, your fear is the biggest threat to your daughter's life. Saskia looked at Domenico. He wins either way, doesn't he? Either he kills us directly or my fear does it for him. No. Domenico crossed the room, knelt beside the bed. He doesn't win. We don't let him win. How? Her voice broke. I close my eyes and I'm back in that coffin. I smell dirt, taste blood, feel the wood crushing down on me. I hear him laughing, telling me I'm going to die alone. She grabbed Domenico's shirt, twisted the fabric in her fists. I can't sleep, can't breathe, can't think about anything except the moment he comes back to finish this. Domenico had killed men for less than what Nero had done, had made them beg, made them suffer. But watching Saskia break apart piece by piece, this was worse than any torture he'd ever inflicted. This was watching the woman he loved lose herself to fear. Then we end it, he said. Tonight. Now. We stop waiting for him to come to us. We hunt him down and we end this. You don't know where he is. I'll find him. Domenico stood. I'll tear Chicago apart if I have to. I'll make every person who's ever spoken to him bleed until someone talks. And while you're doing that, I'll be here alone. Saskia's voice was flat, dead, waiting for one of his men to break through that door, waiting to be buried again. Only this time there won't be air holes. This time he'll make sure she was right. Leaving her unprotected was suicide. But staying here watching her deteriorate wasn't sustainable either. There has to be another way, Leona said quietly. Something that doesn't require you to choose between hunting him and protecting her. Domenico paced. Thinking, calculating, running scenarios. Nero was smart, paranoid. He'd gone underground completely. Wasn't using his phone. Wasn't accessing his accounts. Wasn't showing his face anywhere Domenico had eyes. But everyone had a weakness. Everyone had one thing they couldn't let go. For Nero, it was pride. And greed. And the burning need to prove he was smarter than Domenico. Better than Domenico. Worthy of leading the family. I know how to draw him out, Domenico said slowly. But you're really not going to like it. Tell me... I call a family meeting. All the captains, all the soldiers. I tell them about the baby, about you, about everything Nero did. Domenico met her eyes. And I name you as my heir. Put you in line to inherit the entire operation if something happens to me. Saskia stared at him. That's insane. That's the point. Nero buried you to prevent you from threatening his inheritance. If I publicly name you and the baby as my heirs, he'll have no choice but to act, to make a move. And when he does, you'll be ready. Saskia's expression shifted. Fear giving way to something harder, colder. But that makes me and the baby targets for everyone, not just Nero. Every captain who wants power, every soldier with ambition. You're already a target. This makes you a protected target, untouchable, because touching you means war with me. Domenico crouched in front of her. I'm offering you the one thing Nero can't stand. Power, recognition, a place in this family that he's spent his whole life trying to earn. He'll come for you. And when he does, we'll be waiting. Leona cleared her throat. This is madness. Both of you realize that, right? Saskia needs rest and safety. Not to be paraded in front of a room full of killers. She'll never be safe until Nero's dead, Domenico said. And I can't hunt him without leaving her vulnerable. This forces his hand. Makes him act on our terms instead of his. What if he sends someone instead of coming himself? Saskia asked. Then I kill whoever he sends, and the next person, and the next, until he realizes the only way to finish this is to do it himself. Domenico's smile was cold. Nero's pride won't let him hide forever, won't let him admit he's afraid of me. He'll come. Saskia was quiet for a long moment. Her hand moved to her stomach, to their daughter, who'd survived burial and oxygen deprivation, and her mother's terror, who kept fighting even when the odds said she shouldn't exist. Okay, Saskia said finally, but I have conditions. Name them. I want a gun, and I want to know how to use it. I'm not walking into that meeting defenseless. Done. And when Nero shows up, when this ends, I want to be the one who pulls the trigger. Domenico looked at her. At this woman who'd been buried alive 9 days ago, who'd spent 9 hours suffocating in darkness, who'd clawed through her own grave only to have her cousin-in-law promise to finish what he'd started. She wasn't asking for revenge. She was demanding justice, the kind that came from a bullet between the eyes. You've never killed anyone, he said quietly. I know. Her eyes were steady, clear. But I'm going to start with him. Leona shook her head. This is a terrible idea, all of it. And I'm going on record saying that I strongly advise against. Noted, Domenico said. Can you stay with her while I make arrangements? Someone should. Leona looked at Saskia. And someone should also mention that murder is probably not great for your stress levels. Neither is living in fear, Saskia shot back. At least this way I'm doing something, fighting back. Making him afraid for a change. She had a point. Trauma specialists talked about reclaiming power, taking control. Maybe pulling the trigger on the man who'd tried to murder her and her daughter was exactly what Saskia needed. Or maybe it would destroy what was left of her soul. Either way, Domenico was going to make sure she got the choice. He spent the next 3 days preparing, teaching Saskia to shoot in the warehouse's basement. She was a natural. Steady hands, good eye, no hesitation once she committed. By day 3, she could hit center mass at 20 yards. Again, he'd say, and she'd empty the magazine into the target, reload, fire again, never flinching, never questioning, just cold, mechanical precision. At night, she still woke screaming, still felt dirt in her mouth, still checked compulsively that the baby was moving. But during the day, with a gun in her hand, she was someone else, someone harder, someone Nero should have killed when he had the chance. On November 22nd, Domenico made the call, summoned every captain and soldier to the warehouse in Little Italy, the same warehouse where his grandfather had founded the family in 1952, where business was conducted, where blood debts were paid. What are we walking into? Vito asked the morning of the meeting. War, Domenico said, or peace. Depends on Nero. You really think he'll show? I know he will. His pride won't let him stay away. At 7 p.m., the warehouse filled with 40 men. Soldiers and captains from every crew in Chicago. They knew something big was happening. Could feel it in the air, the tension, the anticipation. Nero arrived at 7:15, confident, smiling, like he hadn't tried to murder Domenico's woman and child, like he hadn't buried Saskia alive and left her to suffocate. He saw Domenico and his smile widened. "Cousin, good to see you. I heard Saskia took a little trip. Hope she's feeling better." "She'll tell you herself," Domenico said. "She's coming." Nero's smile flickered. "She's here? I thought she'd be too. Traumatized. She's stronger than you thought." The back door opened. Saskia walked in, 6 days post-burial. Visibly pregnant now at 14 weeks. Wearing black pants and a black sweater. Hair pulled back. No makeup. She looked like a widow at a funeral. Nero's funeral. The room went dead silent. Every man there knew the rumors. Knew Nero's cousin had gone missing. Knew she'd been found. But seeing her, seeing the woman who'd survived being buried alive, that was different. Nero's face drained white. "Saskia, what a surprise." "Is it?" Her voice was cold, steady. "You seem shocked to see me. Almost like you thought I'd be dead." The accusation hung in the air. Every man in the room understood what she was saying, what she was implying. Domenico stepped forward. "We're here because family business needs to be addressed. Because betrayal needs to be answered." He looked at Nero. "And because my cousin tried to murder the mother of my child." The room erupted. 40 voices shouting at once. Captains demanding explanations. Soldiers reaching for weapons. The warehouse in Little Italy, where Domenico's grandfather had built an empire from nothing, descended into chaos. But Domenico stood calm at the center of it. Silent, waiting, letting the storm rage. Nero's voice cut through the noise. "That's a lie. I would never. We're family. You drugged her." Domenico's voice was quiet. Deadly. November 15th, 8:47 p.m. "You gave her wine laced with rohypnol. You loaded her into a van while she was unconscious. You drove her to Starved Rock State Park and buried her alive in a pine coffin with air holes so she'd suffocate slowly. That's insane." "Why would I?" "Because she's carrying my heir." Domenico pulled out his phone. Played the video Saskia had recorded in the coffin. Her voice, terrified, choking, desperate, filled the warehouse. "Your cousin did this. Nero. He drugged me and buried me alive. I'm somewhere, I don't know where. Woods. I heard crows earlier. I'm so sorry I trusted him." The video cut off. Silence fell like a hammer. Every man in that room had done terrible things. Had killed. Had tortured. Had broken every commandment except one. You don't touch family. You don't hurt women. You don't murder babies. Those were the lines that separated them from animals. Nero had crossed all three. "She's lying," Nero said, but his voice shook. "That video could be from anywhere. Could be staged. You can't." "I have security footage," Domenico said, "from our building, showing you loading a crate into a van. I have GPS data from the van showing it traveled to Starved Rock. I have soil samples matching the burial site. I have 7 witnesses who helped dig her out." He paused. "And I have this." He pulled back his sleeves, showed his hands, still bandaged, still healing from tearing through the coffin with his bare hands. "I dug her out myself. Pulled her from a grave 6 feet deep. She wasn't breathing. Our daughter had stopped moving. I brought them both back from death." The room stayed silent, watching, waiting. "Why?" someone asked. Marco, one of his oldest soldiers. "Why would Nero do it?" "Because he wanted the family for himself," Domenico said. "Because a pregnant woman threatened his inheritance. Because he's been embezzling for 2 years, and Saskia's baby would have exposed him. Because he's a coward who buries women instead of facing men." Nero's hand moved toward his jacket. Toward the gun Domenico knew he carried. But 12 weapons came up faster, pointing at Nero from every direction. He froze. "I did what I had to do," Nero said. His voice changed, lost its panic, went cold. For the family, for the legacy. You were going soft, Domenico, choosing her over the business, over us. Someone had to act, so you admit it. Domenico's voice was ice. I admit I tried to save this family from your weakness. From her. Nero looked at Saskia with pure hatred. You think a 48-year-old art teacher belongs in our world? Think she's going to raise a Valente? She's soft. Useless? A liability. She survived 9 hours buried alive, Vito said quietly. How long would you last? Nero's jaw clenched. This isn't over. You think exposing me ends this? Think these men will follow you after you chose some woman over blood? Over loyalty? You're right, Domenico said. This isn't over. Which is why I'm making an announcement. He raised his voice. As of today, Saskia Morvin is under my protection. She and our daughter are off limits. Anyone who touches them dies. Anyone who threatens them dies. Anyone who even looks at them wrong dies. That's not enough, Nero spat. You can't protect her forever. I'll wait. I'll plan. And one day when you're distracted or weak or dead, I'll finish what I started. No, Saskia's voice rang out. Clear. Strong. She stepped forward. You won't. She pulled a Glock from her waistband, the one Domenico had spent 3 days teaching her to use, pointed it at Nero's chest. Her hands didn't shake. Her eyes didn't waver. You buried me alive, she said. You drugged me in my own home. You put me in a coffin and covered me with dirt and left me to die with my baby. You smiled while you did it. Saskia, don't. Nero's confidence cracked. It was business. Nothing personal. We can. Business? Her voice rose. You tried to murder my child and you call it business? Please. I'll disappear. Leave Chicago. You'll never see me again. You're right about that. Saskia's finger moved to the trigger. Because you're not leaving here alive. Domenico watched her. Watched this woman who'd never held a gun 3 days ago. Who'd lived a peaceful life before she'd fallen in love with a monster. Who'd been transformed by trauma into something harder. Something capable of pulling that trigger. But did she really want to? Did she understand what killing did to a person? How it changed you? How you'd see Nero's face every time you closed your eyes for the rest of your life? Saskia, he said quietly. Think about this. Once you pull that trigger, there's no going back. No forgetting. No undoing it. I know. She didn't look away from Nero. But if I don't do this, if I let him live, I'll spend every day afraid. Every night checking locks. Every kick from our daughter wondering if it's the last one before he tries again. I can't live like that. Won't raise my child like that. Then don't. Nero dropped to his knees, started begging. Please. I'll do anything. I'll sign everything over to you. I'll testify. You'll die, Saskia said. But not fast. Not easy. You're going to feel what I felt. She lowered the gun, looked at Domenico. I want him in a coffin. I want him buried alive. I want him to know what it feels like to suffocate in the dark, to feel the air running out, to know death is coming and there's nothing he can do to stop it. The room erupted again. Some men nodding approval, others looking uncomfortable. This wasn't just execution. This was torture, cruelty, the kind of thing that turned humans into monsters. But Nero had started it, and Saskia was going to finish it. There's a basement, she said. Same place where he drugged me. That's where we do it. That's where he digs his own grave. Domenico looked at his men, at the captains and soldiers who'd served his family for decades. Anyone have a problem with this? Silence. No one spoke. No one objected. Because Nero had broken the code, had tried to murder a pregnant woman, had buried her alive. There was no mercy for that. No forgiveness. Vito, Domenico said. Take him to the basement. Vito grabbed Nero, dragged him toward the door. Nero fought, screamed. You can't do this. I'm family. Blood. Domenico, please. You stopped being family when you buried her, Domenico said. They took Nero to the basement of the old Valente compound, the same basement where he drugged Saskia 10 days ago, forced him to dig, 6 feet down, 6 feet deep, the same dimensions as the coffin he'd put her in. Nero dug for 3 hours, crying, begging, promising everything. His hands bled, his back screamed, but he dug. Because the alternative was a bullet, and a bullet would be mercy. When the grave was ready, Saskia appeared at the top of the stairs, gun in hand, face like stone. "Get in," she said. "No. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Get in." Vito shoved him. Nero tumbled into the grave, landed hard, started climbing out. Domenico's men pushed him back, held him down while they positioned the coffin lid. "Wait!" Nero screamed. "You're going to bury me alive? That's murder. That's—" "Justice," Saskia said. She looked at Domenico. "Air holes? Your call." She thought about it. About 9 hours in darkness. About suffocating slowly. About the baby stopping moving. About dirt filling her mouth. "No holes," she said. "He doesn't deserve what he gave me." They lowered the lid, nailed it shut. Nero's screams were muffled, desperate. Then Vito put a bullet through the wood, into Nero's knee. The screaming intensified. "So he can't kick his way out," Vito explained. Saskia picked up a shovel, looked at the 40 men watching, at these killers and criminals who'd come to witness justice. "Anyone else want to try me? Want to test whether I belong in this family?" No one spoke. She drove the shovel into the dirt pile, lifted it, dropped the first load onto the coffin. Then another. And another, each shovelful deliberate, methodical, covering the man who'd tried to kill her, who'd tried to kill her baby. The screaming went on for 20 minutes, then stopped. Either Nero had passed out from pain and fear, or he'd accepted his fate. Either way, by midnight on November 22nd, 2025, the basement floor was smooth, level. No sign a grave had ever been dug. Domenico stood beside Saskia, put his arm around her. "How do you feel?" "Empty," she said. "I thought I'd feel relief, or satisfaction, or something. But I just feel empty." "That's normal, is it?" She looked up at him. "Is any of this normal?" No. He was honest. "None of this is normal, but it's done. Nero's gone. The threat's over. You and our daughter are safe. Are we?" Saskia's hand moved to her stomach. "Or did I just become the woman who buried a man alive? The woman who belongs in your world? The woman who can never go back to who she was?" Domenico didn't have an answer for that. Because she was right. The woman who'd chosen baby names and painted nurseries was gone, buried in that grave with Nero. What emerged was someone harder, someone forged by trauma into something new, someone who belonged in his world whether she wanted to or not. 3 months later, February 14th, 2026, Saskia gave birth to a healthy baby girl. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, perfect. They named her Cova Valente. And in Chicago's underworld, everyone knew you didn't cross the Valentes, because the woman who'd survived her own grave would bury you in yours. February 14th, 2026, 3:47 a.m. Saskia's water broke in the same warehouse where she'd spent 3 months hiding, where she'd learned to shoot, where she'd transformed from victim to survivor to something else entirely, something the Chicago underworld would come to fear. Domenico was beside her in seconds, phone already out, calling Dr. Leona Ashwin. "It's time. I'm 20 minutes away. Can you get her to the hospital?" "No hospitals." Saskia's voice was strained. Another contraction hit. She gripped Domenico's arm hard enough to bruise. Too exposed, too many people. What if Nero had friends? What if someone tries to finish what he started? "Nero's dead," Domenico said gently. "Has been for 3 months. No one's coming for you." You don't know that. The fear in her eyes was real, primal. 3 months hadn't erased what Nero had done to her, hadn't healed the scars. She still woke screaming sometimes, still checked the locks obsessively, still couldn't be in small spaces without panicking. Burying Nero alive had given her justice, not peace. Then we do it here, Domenico said. Leona's good. She's delivered babies in worse conditions. Like, where? War zones, basements during raids. Once in a car trunk while hiding from the feds, he smiled. This warehouse is practically a 5-star hospital compared to that. Leona arrived in 18 minutes. Set up a sterile area in the bedroom they'd been using. 4-line. Monitors. Everything she'd need. How far apart are the contractions? 4 minutes, Saskia gasped. And getting closer. Good, that's good. Everything looks normal. Baby's heartbeat is strong. Leona examined her. You're at 7 centimeters. This is moving fast. How fast? Hours. Maybe less. Leona looked at Domenico. I need you calm. Can you do that? He nodded, but his hands were shaking. 49 years old. Had killed his first man at 19. Had built an empire on violence and fear. Had survived 3 assassination attempts and 2 FBI investigations. But watching Saskia in labor, watching her in pain, this terrified him more than any bullet ever had. Because he couldn't control this. Couldn't fight it. Couldn't make it stop. All he could do was hold her hand and watch their daughter fight her way into a world that had already tried to kill her twice. The labor lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of Saskia screaming and crying and gripping his hand hard enough to break bones. 6 hours of watching her body betray her, of seeing the trauma resurface, the fear of confined spaces, the panic of not being able to breathe, the absolute certainty that she was dying. I can't do this, she sobbed at hour 4. I can't. It's too much. I can't breathe. I need... You can, Domenico said. You survived 9 hours buried alive. You dug your way out of a grave. You buried the man who tried to kill you. You can do this. That was different. How? Because then I was only fighting for me. She looked at him with wild eyes. Now I have to keep her safe. Have to make sure she survives. What if I can't? What if I fail her like I almost failed her in that coffin? You didn't fail her. She's here. She's fighting. She's your daughter. He pressed his hand to her stomach, felt the baby moving, struggling. She's a fighter, like her mama. At 9:47 a.m., Cova Valente entered the world screaming, loud, angry, alive. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of pure fury wrapped in blood and vernix. Leona placed her on Saskia's chest. Mother and daughter, both survivors, both fighters. Saskia stared at her baby, at this tiny human who'd survived burial and oxygen deprivation and her mother's terror, who'd kicked through 9 hours of suffocation to prove she was alive, who'd refused to die even when death was inevitable. She's perfect, Saskia whispered. She's absolutely perfect. Domenico looked at his daughter, at this miracle he'd stopped believing in, felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked away for 30 years. Since his mother's death, since his father's stroke, since he'd learned that love meant weakness in his world. But holding Cova, feeling her tiny hand wrap around his finger, he didn't care about weakness anymore. Didn't care about power or empire or legacy. Cared only about keeping this baby safe, about giving her a life where she'd never know what it felt like to be buried alive. What does Cova mean? Leona asked, cleaning up. Cave, Domenico said, in Italian, because she survived the grave with her mother, because she was born from darkness into light. Over the next 3 months, word spread through Chicago's underworld. The Dawn had a daughter, an heir, born to the woman who'd been buried alive and lived. The woman who'd buried her would be killer with her bare hands. The woman who'd become a Valente not by blood, but by surviving what would have killed anyone else. Saskia Morvan, now Saskia Valente after a quiet courthouse wedding in March, was no longer just Domenico's woman. She was the queen who'd crawled out of her own grave, the mother who'd fought through suffocation to save her baby, The wife who'd buried a man alive and slept soundly after. And everyone knew you didn't cross her. Didn't threaten her. Didn't even look at her daughter wrong. Because Domenico Valente had burned men alive for less. Had wiped out entire crews for insults. Would raze Chicago to the ground before he let anyone touch his family again. But it wasn't Domenico the underworld feared most. It was Saskia. Because Domenico was predictable. You knew what he'd do if you crossed him. Knew the rules. Knew the boundaries. Saskia had no rules. No boundaries. She'd been a peaceful art conservator who'd never hurt anyone. Then Nero had buried her alive. And she'd emerged from that grave as something else. Something that understood violence not as a tool but as justice. As necessity. As the only language certain people understood. On May 20th, 2026, 6 months after Nero's burial, a captain named Luca Moretti made a mistake. Got drunk at a family gathering, made a comment about Saskia, about how she'd seduced her way into power and probably had Nero killed to secure her position. The room went silent. Domenico started to stand. Started to reach for his gun. But Saskia put her hand on his arm. Stopped him. "Let me," she said quietly. She walked across the room. Stood in front of Luca. This man twice her size. This killer who'd been with the family for 20 years. Looked him in the eye. "Say that again," she said. Luca smirked, emboldened by alcohol and stupidity. "I said you seduced." Saskia's fist connected with his throat. Crushed his windpipe. He went down choking, gasping, clawing at his neck. "I was buried alive," she said calmly, watching him suffocate. "For 9 hours. I know exactly how long it takes to die from oxygen deprivation, how it feels, how your body fights, even when your brain knows it's over." She crouched beside him. "You've got about 4 minutes, maybe 5 if you're lucky. Use them to apologize." Luca couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just stared at her with bulging eyes. "No?" Saskia stood, looked at Domenico. "Call Leona. Tell her we have a medical emergency. But take your time." Domenico pulled out his phone, dialed slowly, deliberately, letting Luca suffer, letting him understand that insulting Saskia Valente meant death. Leona arrived in 12 minutes. Luca survived. Barely. Spent 3 weeks in ICU with a reconstructed trachea. But he lived. And he never spoke Saskia's name again except with respect. The message was clear: the queen who survived her own grave would bury you in yours. By the time Kova turned 1, November 15th, 2027, exactly 2 years after Saskia's burial, the family had transformed. Domenico still ran the operations, still made the decisions, still commanded the loyalty. But Saskia stood beside him. Equal. Partner. The woman who'd proven she belonged not through blood, but through survival. She never went back to art conservation, never returned to the peaceful life she'd lived before. That woman was dead. Buried 6 feet under, in starved Rock State Park. What emerged was someone harder. Someone who understood that in Domenico's world, mercy was weakness. Fear was currency. And survival meant becoming the thing you feared most. She taught Kova early, taught her that the world was dangerous, that people would try to hurt her, that she had to be strong, had to be smart, had to be willing to do terrible things to survive. "Is this what you wanted?" Domenico asked one night. They were in their rebuilt penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Kova sleeping peacefully in the nursery. Chicago glittering below them. This life? This world? Saskia looked at him, at this man who dug her out of a grave with his bare hands, who'd wept when their daughter was born, who'd given her power and protection and a family she'd stopped believing in. "No," she said honestly. "I wanted a quiet life, wanted to raise our daughter in peace, wanted to grow old painting and teaching and never holding a gun again. We couldn't." She cut him off. "Nero made sure of that when he buried me. Made sure I'd never be that woman again. Never feel safe in small spaces. Never trust family. Never close my eyes without seeing darkness." She paused. "He tried to kill me and instead he created this. created the woman who buried him alive. The woman who belongs in your world. Do you regret it? Any of it? Saskia thought about the question. About 9 hours suffocating in a coffin? About the terror and pain and certainty of death? About clawing through her own grave? About shooting Luca Moretti without hesitation? About becoming someone she didn't recognize? Then she looked at the nursery. At their daughter, sleeping peacefully. At this miracle who'd survived the impossible. Who'd lived free and protected and loved because her mother had become a monster to keep her safe. No, Saskia said. I don't regret it. Because Kova will never be buried alive. Will never be drugged by family. Will never know what it feels like to die in the dark. I gave up who I was to make sure of that. And I'd do it again. Domenico pulled her close. Kissed her forehead. You're terrifying, you know that? Good? She smiled. That's how I stay alive. Years later, when Kova was 10 and asking about her name, Saskia told her the truth. All of it. About Nero and the burial and the suffocation and the grave. About 9 hours in darkness. About the rescue and the revenge and the choice to become something harder. Mama, Kova asked quietly, do you think killing Uncle Nero made you a bad person? Saskia thought about the question, about morality and justice and the lines people draw between them, about whether survival justified cruelty, about whether love excused violence. I think, she said finally, that good and bad don't matter when someone tries to kill your baby. Only survival matters. Only protection. Only making sure the people who hurt you never hurt anyone again. So, you'd do it again? Without hesitation, Kova nodded, absorbed this. Then I'm glad you're my mama. Glad you're the kind of person who fights back, who doesn't let bad people win. Me too, baby. Saskia held her daughter close. Me too. And in the basement of the old Valente compound, 6 feet below smooth concrete, Nero Valente's bones rested in their pine coffin. A warning, a testament, a reminder that in Chicago's underworld, there was one woman you never crossed. The woman who survived her own grave would bury you in yours, and she'd sleep soundly after. If this story moved you, hit subscribe so you never miss our next dark romance. Comment below, should Saskia's story continue? What happened to the other captains who doubted her? Drop your thoughts, and I'll create part 2 based on your requests. This channel thrives on your engagement. Every comment shapes the next story. You have the power here. Use it